I want to start our conversation with the next information. In 2023, Ukraine received $23.6 billion of partners' microfinancial assistance. Recently, the state budget of Ukraine has received the second tranche under the extended fund facility from the International Monetary Fund, totaling $890 million to cover priority expenditures. The economic support of partners is one of the elements of Ukraine's resilience, as it allows us to finance non-military budget expenditures, including social obligations of the state, said Denis Shmyhal. The largest contribution from received $23.6 billion was made by the European Union, the United States, Canada, and the IMF. The Prime Minister thanked partners for their solidarity and willingness to support our struggle for independence and our plans to rebuild the country. So my first question, Bohdan, will be, as a result, who should help in restoring the depleted infrastructure? After all, initially it was about money from Russia Federation and the withdrawal of frozen accounts of the Russian state and individual sanctioned figures. Is the recovery mechanism clear for you, or is it all on paper mostly and hypothetical?
I think that now we are in the process just for not only establishment but implementing the recovery approaches in the context of using financial aid from our partners to help the people in need. I mean, is the first priority, especially internally displaced persons. And I think that in London, it was a conference on recovery. It was a strong message that, okay, we Ukrainians understand that for our partners, it's not only easy also to just support us, usually financial, for these purposes, but we asked our partners when you will decide. And first of all, it's necessary to have a political decision to use the Russian frozen assets in the context of transferring to Ukraine and using this for recovery processes, for rebuilding, for building new infrastructure, for schools, for universities, for hospitals. That's why I think we should work using two tracks. The first one, of course, this kind of financial aid that we are now receiving. We have to show the best practices and best examples, successful examples in implementing the pilot projects. I mean, with infrastructure or with other issues, because it's not only about the context of building or rebuilding. It is also the recovery of human capital, human capacity. And after this, we should work using our political channels to persuade our partners just to use Russian frozen assets. I think two main priorities should be just on our track.
There are lots of quarrelings about what has to be first. It's civil infrastructure, like you said right now. And what will we do with the manufacturers or fabrics that were destroyed? And the other question, we have a lot of cities, the small towns that were completely destroyed. So we have to renew the infrastructure that was before this destroyment, or we have to plan something modern, something more necessary for this region, not to restore, but to start and building from the very beginning?
I think build back better, this kind of approach and slogan is the best. I mean, that we have to differentiate every region, and have to just provide and to prepare the mapping of different categories of manufacturing, for example, because as you mentioned, just some towns and some cities, unfortunately, were destroyed by Russians, especially on the east of Ukraine with heavy industry. And now it's not possible to just rebuild. And maybe in the future, it will not have a sense just to do this that way as it has been done. That's why I think that we as a country and our government should just prepare this kind of plan, because our European partners, by the way, they just are waiting for this plan of the first track recovery, I mean, when we can just, in which we can just use the pilots for some kind, not only critical infrastructure rebuilding, but also with a focus on the business, small and medium entrepreneurship, because it's also important to support our business environment despite the Russian war. That's why Build Back Better, of course, new approaches, new understanding the mapping of every region, I mean, because a lot of things has been changed, and also the concrete successful pilots to persuade our partners to continue the support.
Talking about long-term perspective, we want to understand what companies will provide their resources, not only in money, but in providing job opportunities. Will it be foreigners, or will it be our Ukrainians that lost their job or just want to take part in rebuilding their concrete region or city or town?
I think job creation is the first priority, my personal opinion. By the way, I'm working with Dutch colleagues, for example, Spark organization, well known in different regions of the world. They are just working hardly in the context of job creation, especially with involving young people. And I hope that in Ukraine, this kind of pilots and programs will be much more than now. Because when a person has a job, it's much easier to just to think about the day after today, you know, and to not only expect the aid from our partners, but also just to improve our economic conditions and financial stability. That's why job creation, first priority. After this, social security is the second one, because it's necessary to provide the social security for people in need, especially, as I mentioned, internally displaced people, women, families of our hero soldiers. And also after this small and medium entrepreneurship, it's not so easy for this kind of persons just to develop and to survive during this kind of obstacles that we are facing with Russian war. But anyway, it's our future, and also heavy industry, first of all, and highly technological sector of economy and agricultural sector. This kind of focus will help us to not only to survive, just to develop our economy.
And going back to the short, long perspective, you just said about the concrete help to the families. I mean, maybe it's about relocated people from the destroyed territories. Nowadays, this help that's already on the accounts here in Ukraine, that was provided by this organization I mentioned before. How it works, what's the mechanism, what people or what group of people can afford this help, and in which way?
First of all, as I know, just an approach of, for example, reskilling trainings could be helpful for internally displaced persons, for example, for coal miners, because there are a lot of coal miners from the eastern part of Ukraine that now just unfortunately faced to live in other regions of Ukraine. And they're trying to find themselves in maybe agriculture sphere or in the service sector. That's why the reskilling trainings, for example, academies, can be quite effective from the experience of other countries that starting from the war conflicts. I can say this, but also the support from the government. I mean, as I know, some programs are existing through which it's possible to receive some small grants but it could be also helpful. And opportunities, I mean, with relocation of the businesses. Now we see this process from the eastern central part of Ukraine, sometimes to the more western regions, more safer regions, but we also can just declare that unfortunately in Ukraine it's difficult to say that some regions are much more safer with this kind of targets from the Russians on Lviv. That's why government support, partner support, because foreign aid, it's not only financial capacity, it's also the distribution of this aid towards the final recipients, and it's necessary to provide this mechanism in appropriate, effective way, and in fair way, by the way, with involving of regional actors and also people who are in need.